like I said, my name is Regina, and I'm a speech-language pathologist at Progressive Pediatric Therapy, and today we're going to talk about literacy. So I think we all know how important reading is. We use it every single day. We use it just to drive down the street. We read stop signs. We read the speed limit. Obviously, it's important for our kids in schools. They're always reading. But even for our teenagers with and without disabilities, reading a resume or how to create a resume, reading the job application, that's what I want to say, reading a job application, knowing how to fill those kinds of things out, and reading and recognizing, you know, what words mean and how can I connect those. So we all know the importance of literacy. So what I want to talk about, what I'm very passionate about, is just how early literacy skills start. This is not something that you just wait around and wait till they start school before you're like, yeah, let's start reading. No, it's something that actually starts at birth. So I'll kind of show you, you know, some of the pictures on just how important reading is and what happens to our brain when we are being read to as a child. Let me pull up my pictures and we'll do old school. I'm going to show you guys on my iPad. Some super cool things though. So, for example, just reading a sentence to a child lights up certain parts of the brain depending on actually the words we are saying. So, for example, in this image here, you'll see that part of the brain is lit up, and the sentence being read when this part of the brain is lit up is an action sentence. So, Marco hit the ball as hard as he could. So, this area of the brain is responsible for like actions and processing, like, you know, those kind of verbs and those kind of words. Yet, if we were to look at this part of the brain, there we go. This is the part of the brain where where we process senses and smells and different kind of sensory items. So, for example, in a sentence read to a child like this, Jessie smelled sweet cookies baking in the oven. An entirely different part of the brain lights up. So, you know, that's a huge difference from where it was before, where we're processing actions and language and verbs, I mean. So, or how about, let's look at this one. This one's very interesting. Lots of parts of the brains are lit up here. And the sentence says, the dog's fur was cold and wet. So again, we're lighting up different parts of the brain that's responsible for nouns, labeling items and animals, and we're also looking at parts of the brain lighting up with adjectives and descriptor words. So when we say read to your child even as early as birth, is because different parts of the brain are going to light up. And even if, you know, your child doesn't know some of the meanings of those words, the fact that we are using that number of words to when we read a book versus when we're just kind of talking to them, we're using new and different words. They're gaining that, they're getting that knowledge. So for example, so let's talk about birth to like a year-old. You know, by a month-old, maybe they're responding to mom and dad's voice, family members that are very familiar. 3 months, they're cooing. These are kind of the basic developmental language skills that they're getting early on. 6 months, maybe they're starting to imitate some sounds. So why are we reading to them? Well, we're reading to them so that they can start building up that repertoire. A child needs to hear, oh, I wish I knew the number. I want to say upwards of like 10,000 words, or a word 10,000 times to get to understand what that word means. So the more often that we're reading, the more exposure we're giving them to words and exposing them to language. By 3 to 6 months, you should actually start seeing your child, when they look at a book, actually looking at the pages. And that is one of the earliest signs of literacy, is recognizing, hey, this is a book, and look at this, there's something on this page. And if I were to turn that page, I get something new. So those are some things that you can start looking at as early as 3 to 6 months that are some early literacy skills. And then just past that, like 9 to a year old, they're looking at kids actually like manipulating the books, turning the pages, flipping them around, really kind of exploring a book and what it is. So that's just in the first year. All of these very basic foundational skills actually can be taught early on when it comes to learning how to write and read. So let's talk about what we're kind of preparing for, right? So now we're preparing for kindergarten. So maybe that 1 to 4 or 5 years mark. What can we do? Well, doctors and people say, well, you need to read to them, right? So we're already reading to them. So now how can we really hone in to kind of promote literacy skills in our early pre-K, early toddler kiddos? So at 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, we should be seeing a lot more words, right? Maybe anywhere from 1 to 3 words, sentences. That's what we're looking at with language for a year to 3 years old, 2 or 3 years old. So with reading, so again, you're showing them the books and you're reading to them, and that's how they're kind of learning to string words together. By reading to our kiddos, we're also teaching them the pattern of language. We, in English, we say the big dog. We don't say the dog big, not in English at least. And they're learning that pattern. They're learning the adjective follows, or the noun follows the adjective. The adjective comes first and then the noun. They're learning that, and as we read to them, they're figuring out, hey, there's a pattern here. And it's always the red car, the green frog, the big dog, the tiny rabbit. There's always that pattern. So they start to learn that when you read to them. And they really start to respond really, really well to reading at this age, that 1, 2 years old mark. They really start to respond well. Maybe it starts to become part of your nighttime routine. And what an awesome nighttime routine, because it teaches, you're still learning and you're still teaching them all the way up till they're about to fall asleep, yet reading is still so relaxing and so calming. So pretty remarkable. That's something they could be learning so much, and it's still such a relaxing and calming activity. So now let's talk about more of that toddler age, that 3 to 5. Awareness, and that's like that exploration kind of explorer personality that really comes out. Maybe they're starting to request certain books. Maybe they want to hear more. They want to, they have a favorite book. They are pretending to read because that's what you're doing. You're showing them, you're modeling. So again, we're not even talking about kids reading yet. However, we're already have built such a strong foundation of literacy just by us reading to our kids as early as a day old to 4 or 5 before they've even started school. So really important kind of stuff. And then at this age too, that 3, 4, 5-year-old mark, that's when they really start to recognize letters and, stating the alphabet. Maybe at this age, they're starting to recognize certain letters make certain sounds. Certain letters make certain sounds. And how fun is that? There's a lot of music out there that kind of explores that, that letter to sound, correspondence. So that's great. YouTube is actually a fabulous resource because of music, and there's a lot of educational tools out there. And I'm a big proponent for music and literacy because it's just another avenue to kind of gain the same type of skills. So as some of you may know, I used to be a music therapist, and I used to work a lot with preschoolers and children with special needs, complex needs as a music therapist. And one of the beauties of music is that it activates several parts of the brain all at the same time. So a lot of times I've had kids that, were not talking or very limited verbal output, yet they could sing a whole song. So how incredible, right? So music is a really good literacy tool. It gives them another avenue. It's another way to kind of gain that same type of foundational skills that we need in our little kids for literacy. So now the fun stuff. So let's talk about kindergarten. So maybe now they've learned their letters, they maybe know their numbers, and they know some letters make certain sounds. They're starting to make those connections. This age, they really know a lot, right? I mean, they're we're talking like 20,000 words, our little, kindergartner knows. So reading, now they're starting to really understand and comprehend the storyline at this age. They're starting to know, like, hey, I could tell a story. I can tell a story about my birthday party. I can tell a story about how I went to the beach yesterday. They're starting to learn that their life is a lot like a story. It's a lot like a book. We ask our kids all the time, hey, how was your day today? Or what did you do at grandma's today? And that is storytelling. Well, first, grandma and I made cookies, and then we watched a movie, and then you came home and it was fantastic. They're starting to tell a story. And again, I believe that skill of learning to tell a story is really because of their exposure to how our books are written, how they all have a beginning and an ending. Maybe more complex book, they have a problem and the character has to solve the problem. It's a lot like their life. They came across a problem. How did you fix that? Oh, wow, that's cool. They're really learning how to problem solve, and that's awesome. So our kindergartners, they know their letters. They're starting to recognize letters combined to make words, and they're even starting to recognize like certain words. Like, they could spot the word dog and be like, that's dog, I know that's dog. Just because if they're not even reading and sounding out each and every letter, they can actually recognize the word as a whole and know that's the word dog. So very cool stuff. I know I'm going super fast, but there's so much to go on with literacy, and I'm so passionate about it. There's just a lot to go on, and there's a lot that you can do as parents to kind of jump in there. There's another picture I wanted to show that I didn't get to show before. But again, just to show the importance of all the different parts of our brain that we are using when we are reading to our kids. This is a more comprehensive. I know I kind of broke it down to like when we talk about action words, this parts of the brain light up. If we talk about sentences with sensory words in it, like the wet, cold nose on the dog, certain parts of the brain light up. This is a little bit more comprehensive of what the brain, oh, my little light here, there we go. What parts of the brain are lighting up when we're reading to our kids. I mean, this big yellow part here of our brain is responsible for problem solving and executive functioning. So executive functioning meaning independently, or not so much independently, but doing things for themselves, problem solving, like I said, conflicts, like really kind of their personality a lot. That's the kind of the part of the brain for their personality. And other parts of the brain, another big one, orange, that's all vision. That's all recognizing words and patterns and letters create words, words create stories. That kind of thing is being lit up. So, yeah, and that starts as early as infancy. So let me kind of fast forward a little bit and let's talk about, there we go, some grade school type things, so that if you feel that your child maybe is struggling when it comes to reading, that you can always seek out a speech language pathologist for an evaluation on some reading comprehension or writing. Occupational therapy, that's kind of a area where both of our worlds collide a little bit with reading and writing. So if you ever have any concerns, always talk to your pediatrician and maybe request, hey, can I have a script for an evaluation since my child is struggling so much with reading and writing. That's a world that's kind of OT or speech related that we really do kind of intertwine. So that'll be up to the therapist to determine if it's a more speech issue, more of an OT issue, or a little bit of both. So if your grade school child is really struggling in reading and struggling in school, and maybe not even so much in the reading classes as the math class, there's word problems. Like I said, reading isn't everything. Some things to kind of look for is like first grade, we really should start to see reading is a little more fluent. Of course, they come across words they don't know, they could sound them out, but for the most part, it's not so effortful at this point, that first grade. At this point too, they're able to kind of monitor themselves and see and kind of fix their own mistakes, or actually request, like, I don't know what this means, or what's that word? They're starting to recognize, like, I don't know how to say that, or I don't know how to read that. That's at first grade age. Second grade, that's when they're really starting to identify a lot of words just by looking at it, not even reading. They're really just starting to recognize the pattern of the word itself, and they don't have to sound out so many words. They're actually recognizing, yeah, that's cat, you know, that's bicycle. Like, they just know what it looks like, and they can read it. Second grade too is when you really start to see discussing characters and discussing the storyline and the events in the story in a little bit more detail, and that's when they're starting to read more like non-fictional things too. So that's kind of some, like, my fast pace on reading, and you know, some things to look for. So now let's kind of talk about some special cases. So maybe some teenagers. I want to touch on literacy with our kids who use AAC devices. That's a big passion of mine. So we'll kind of dive into that in just a second. But I do want to touch on our young adults, our teenagers, with any kind of literacy struggles or difficulties that they may be having. So high school is really tricky, middle school very tricky and challenging when they're starting to read passages that are more real world based. They're starting to read more articles. They're starting to read things that aren't so much a story as it is educational, right? Those are the years that we're reading to learn, and that's a big shift in our elementary years where we're reading for hear a story and to know the characters and to, oh, that was fun or scary or whatever. No, now middle school, high school, we're actually reading to learn. So that's a really big shift that's not very clear in our school system, that we're starting to actually learn, like, oh no, I'm reading so I can learn a new topic, or I can learn about something. I'm starting to teach myself. So important skills at that point for literacy is knowing how to like find important details in a text, how to use supporting details, different strategies. So your middle schooler, your high schooler really though, should start to learn to note take. They should start to learn to circle words in a text, underline them, highlight them, start to recognize important parts of a passage, and note taking on the side of, like, hey, this was a big paragraph, let me sum it up, it was about this, and this, moving on. So if you have a teenager who, again, is really struggling with that arena of just undertaking a big piece of information, a big, you know, topic, and they are just not understanding the learning aspect of it, that may be a time to reach out maybe to a speech language pathologist, reach out to the teacher at that point, see what they recommend as well. But I think a lot of kids fall through the cracks in that teenager years because they think, oh, well, they're reading, so they don't need a speech therapist. They know how to read. But comprehension is so much more deep-rooted than just knowing the main idea of a story. So it's really learning how to note take, learning how to find important details, and knowing what is supportive in your text and what is evidence. So I wanted to make sure I touched on that too. They get forgotten about a lot. And then my last kind of group that tends to be a little challenging is our kids with AAC devices. So for those of you who do not know, an AAC device is another means of communication for our kids who are non-verbal or limited verbal. It is a program such as Proloquo or Snap, plus Core is an option too. And I'll just kind of show you as an example, of what it looks like. And these kids who use devices like this tend to really get forgotten about when it comes to literacy, because if they are not reading out loud, they're not talking, there's parents, teachers, other professionals, some people have a really hard time, okay, well, how do I know you're reading? So what can I do? So some things that you can do with your kids, if you have a child who's using an AAC device, is using that, modeling more. So modeling is a really big, important aspect of teaching children with AAC devices. And I always pick like one word at a time, and maybe the word is, let's do she, you know? And when you find a story, you're gonna target the word she. So maybe your main character is a girl, and you're gonna come, or he, like we can do he, because I think I could do that with one of these books here, and target the word. So as you're reading, you're using that word, you're using it as you read. So you come across your story and you say, he loves to ride the train. So every time you would see the word he, I want you to model it on the device. So it says, he loves to ride the train. So when I read it, I'd say, yes, he loves to ride the train. He went to grandma's house. He took the train to grandma's house. So you're constantly using he when you say he. And what that teaches is, one, it shows that you're using the device as well with your child and encouraging use of that, of the device. But you're also teaching like that core word and vocabulary. So you're showing them on their device where to find that word that we keep hearing about in this book. Target one word at a time, and it could be their favorite book, and you could do it 1,000 times. That's okay, because like I said earlier, kids need repetition in order to learn a new word or learn a new vocabulary term. So I went very fast, but I didn't have a whole lot of time today, and there's so much to dive into. I wanted to give a really broad umbrella of how you can help your child as early as a day old in literacy skills. And the biggest point I want to drive home is reading with your child, and taking, when they can read, taking turns reading, and really taking, maybe a book a day, a book every other day, and taking that time and sitting with your child and reading. Another important part of reading that's not so much literacy based, but it's just the action of reading, is like that joint attention. You guys are sharing a book, and it's you two both attending to one book. That's called joint attention. A lot of our kids lack joint attention. They're like, hey, this is mine, that's yours, you do your thing, I do my thing. It's learning that sharing, not just sharing an item, but sharing an interest. Is like, oh, did you read that? Did you see what happened in that picture? And it's starting a conversation, it's starting a dialogue. So if anything, reading to your child not only promotes literacy, but it promotes attention, and it promotes sharing that interest, and it promotes that social, emotional bond between child and parent, between students and teacher, between peer and peer, friend and friend. It really, joint attention, woo, really promotes that. So it's a big thing. And again, joint attention is an early milestone skill. So that's why reading to your child as an infant, or as a child, as a baby, is very important. So I want to take this time, if there's any questions. I know I spoke very quickly, but there's a lot to go for. And if there's anything that's like really interesting or really bugging you to kind of ask, go ahead and ask. And if I'll do another kind of lunch and learn on the topic too. Again, I'm a speech language pathologist of progressive pediatric therapy, and we do a lot of things when it comes to literacy, writing in terms of language, and then your speech and kind of language development. We do a lot of that too. So if you have any questions related to literacy or writing, or maybe what you want to hear next, go ahead and comment below, and our team will kind of get to it. So let me give it a minute. So if anyone has any questions, I definitely want to make sure we have the time to answer them. I like that we said joint attention, because that's so important, and it is, and what a great activity to do to promote joint attention. Oh, a series by age range would be awesome. Yes, actually, and you know why everyone's kind of thinking if they have any questions, I wanted to show you some of my favorite books, speaking of age ranges, on some ideas for you parents on what to read, because I said read to your day-old infant. So what the heck are you reading? So I'll kind of go quickly over some ideas. This is one of my favorite books too. Peter Linenthal, he does a lot of black and white high contrast books. This is awesome, awesome, awesome for our infants, our babies, or kiddos with visual impairments. The high contrast, when our babies are just learning to see, is a really good way to gain their attention. They're simple, they're bright, they're again high contrast, the black on white, white on black, or bright colors on a background. It helps with that kind of visual spatial kind of concept too that OT really works on. In terms of language, again, it's simple words and words that you probably aren't using on a regular basis that you may think. How often are you telling your 2-month-old child, you know, breakfast please, or breakfast first? Not really, probably, right? Because they take a bottle. So again, when you're reading to them, they're hearing new words, they're learning, they're gaining some of that. So the socks, then shoes, flowers and bees outside. You know, you may not be saying this, so when you're reading to them, they're learning all these new vocabulary words. So this is a good book for babies, infants, kiddos with maybe some visual impairments. The high contrast is really great. There's a lot of high contrast books out there, and there's a lot of these books that actually don't have any words. I love that too, because you get to create your own story, and it's a new story every time you read it. Very cool stuff. So that's a good infant to, I mean, however old you want, that's a great book. Another good book, like I mentioned, are Barefoot Books. Like I said, music is really important for language development. It opens up multiple parts of your brain and just gives another avenue to learn. And these Barefoot Books all come with music, and they're all free on YouTube. And this one is super repetitive, which is what I love about it for little ones. Walking through the jungle, what do you see? What do you see? I think I see a lion, rawr, rawr, rawr. Great stuff. So this is a good book too for your pre-K, even kindergartners. You know, you can still use these books and address other things. You know, what animal lives in the jungle? Oh, what does that animal say? What other animal lives in a tree? You could really kind of go off on a lot of different things. And it's music, so it's fun, so it doesn't seem like it's reading. For our older kids, I like these kind of, what are they called? The readers, this one's World of Reading, but there's other ones like the I Can Read books that are awesome. This one's a level 1, which says it's beginner readers, like pre-K through grade 1. And it's because it's simple text and it's repetition. So this one is my superhero one, but it's really simple. Again, keeping the sentences nice and short. This is Spider-Man, very repetitive. So this is good for your AAC users as well, because you could target a word like Spider-Man, where it repeats itself. You know, you can target that word he again. He shoots. He goes to bed. He takes off his mask. You know, so this one's a good, they're nice and short and simple. So again, this is kind of like the grade 1 kindergartner. And then older kids, I don't have them with me. Chapter books are very important. And if you're kind of like, oh man, they do so much reading at school, what else can I do? Recipes. We've talked about before, cooking is so important. So cooking, learning how to read a recipe. You could still do a lot working with recipes. You could still learn it, you could still teach children that idea of retelling, sequencing. Well, first we put the egg in the bowl, then we get a spoon and mix it, and last we pour it into the pan. You can still teach a lot with recipes. I love recipes. Following directions you can do with recipes. Learning what ingredients mean, and learning what does temperature mean? How do you know that little circle meant degree? You could teach a lot with recipes too. So that's a way to still address reading and still do something that's part of your routine already, your cooking. So have them read the recipe to you out loud. That's a great skill for, any age group. Read the directions on the back of the microwavable macaroni and cheese. Tell me, what do we do? How do we make a brownie in a cup? Great stuff. So that is still literacy, even though it doesn't feel like it's a book. It's still learning, reading, applying it, comprehension, and sequencing, and that idea of retelling and finding the important details. So, oh, awesome. Teresa said small board books for younger to preschool, like keeping some in the car. That's a great idea. Definitely something for kids to do in the car, keeping them entertained. That's outside of electronics. That's awesome. And the board books are easy for older infants to open and explore on their own too. And even toddlers and preschoolers like to look at them. So that's great. Perfect, Teresa. Thank you. Yeah, so these are all really good ideas. I hope that you guys learned a lot, and I hope that this was beneficial. Literacy is a really big passion of mine, and I'm really excited that I got to talk about it today. And if for those of you who aren't listening live, still feel free to comment below any questions you may have, maybe how old your child is, their favorite book. We'd love to keep the dialogue going. And have a wonderful day, okay, guys? Thank you so much for joining in.